Hello, folks, and welcome to another episode of Momentum's interview series, where we speak to current and former leaders in the field of sales, deal desk, and RevOps. My name is Mo, and today I'm speaking to Justin Ouyang, investor at OMERS Ventures and former director of sales strategy and operations at Slack. Justin, thanks so much for joining me today. Where does this video find you?
I'm in San Francisco. How about yourself?
I am in Johannesburg, South Africa. So let's get right into it. You spent some time in asset management at Cambridge Associates before shifting to running biz ops and sales at different companies. What's the biggest mental shift you had to make during that career transition?
I think it was just kind of, acting like an owner and taking responsibility at a firm like Cambridge Associates. I was the 1000th, consulting associate at that level likely, and you're kind of a cog in the machine. But when you join a startup, you really need to act like an owner, take on that type of responsibility, and continue to deliver impact, not just in your core area, but any neighboring area. And just shifting that mindset is important for one, doing well and performing well at the role that you're in, but also advancing within, a lot of growth startups that are, growing a lot at the same time.
And there's an interesting approach that you had to sales. Talk to me a little bit about your hunter-farmer approach to sales. How should sales leaders implement either approach, and which one do you prefer most?
I had two different experiences at Intercom and at Slack. At Intercom, we implemented a hunter-farmer model approach immediately. I think that worked really well for that business because Intercom sold to a specific business user in that department, and you wanted to expand usage within that group. At Slack is more of a horizontal product that can be a land and expand model. The IT team might be using it, or the engineering team might be using it at first, and eventually you want to expand it to the whole company. It's a lot more powerful when the whole company's using it. And in that scenario, you really want account executives to do that. Account executives have that skill set where they can break down barriers and move into other departments, where account managers or relationship managers, I think those skill sets are more so expanding usage, expanding adoption, et cetera. It's a little bit harder for those given roles to break down barriers and move into other departments, which I think is key in the Slack model. So I think my answer is it depends on the business, but it's really kind of should be tailored your go-to-market strategy in terms of what types of users you're trying to sell to.
And obviously new challenges present themselves at a global scale. What's the biggest challenge you faced trying to coordinate global sales teams at Intercom?
I think it's just, when you're global, you're presented with different languages, different cultures, different time zones. Coordinating across that for any type of change, whether it's tops down or bottoms up, is incredibly difficult. And just being aware of that as you try to drive that change, making sure that maybe you have boots on the ground in each location, you're translating some of those materials effectively. All those things can really add up and help you actually drive that type of change on a global scale.
Let's move in a little bit to the present now. Tell me a little bit about OMERS Ventures and the mission you're trying to accomplish.
OMERS Ventures is the direct venture arm of OMERS. OMERS is a $100 billion pension fund based in Ontario. The plan supports a lot of the different municipal employees of Ontario. So those are everything from firefighters to paramedics. So it's pretty exciting to be part of a mission-driven organization like that. In addition, that fund, we're kind of unique and innovative in the sense that not many pension funds have gone direct for different types of asset classes. So we're likely the only early stage investing arm of a pension fund in the world. In addition, we also have a growth equity fund, a private equity team, and a direct capital markets and real estate team. And so you really have teams focus on all areas and cycles of a given company, whether it's early stage investing or private equity. In addition to that, for OMERS Ventures specifically, we have 3 offices. We're global. We have Toronto, London, and the Bay Area. Within the US, we are typically multi-stage, multi-sector. Myself and Eugene focus on B2B SaaS, and our colleagues focus on InsurTech, health tech, and prop tech. I think one of the benefits of being part of a larger group like OMERS is you really have experts in each of these areas, whether it's growth equity, private equity, or real estate, and a lot of different assets, whether they're given companies that we've invested in or direct pieces of real estate. So I think for a lot of our portfolio companies, we have a lot of opportunities to connect them with different leaders, different owners across the board.
A bit of a follow-up question to that. You mentioned health tech, prop tech, insure tech. Which of these focus areas has seen the greatest returns over the past couple of years?
In the US, it's pretty early days. We've been in the US for about 3 years, so I think it's a little bit too early to tell. I think those are the areas that we felt like we had a strong thematic focus on, and we had the right types of individuals to focus on that type of investing. It's also, it depends on each type of business, right? Your return profile and the things you're looking for health tech are different than what you're looking for B2B SaaS. There's also an aspect of, prop tech makes sense for OMERS. OMERS owns Oxford, which is a large real estate corporation. So there's a lot of synergies there. I think B2B SaaS, the area I'm focused on, is, transparently probably the most competitive within the US. So we only have a few portfolio companies right now and hope to invest in 2 to 3 more next year.
What founder or team traits would catch your eye? When
I look at teams, I think about, team, TAM, and product. For the team, I think I look for founders who are smart, humble, and incredibly articulate about the space, especially to a large audience. I think about whether they can, attract and recruit top talent, especially in a market like this. Do people sign up for their vision and want to join them on building that journey? Can they also paint a vision beyond just the short term to like 5 to 10 years? And do I agree with that worldview? And more so, just like, does somebody have strong attention to detail? Do I feel like they can execute against their vision? And the last thing I think is also important and hard to suss out, but in my conversations with them and building relationships with them, do I feel like they can learn and change? I think those things are really important, because the iteration of a company that you meet at a given stage is likely not going to be the end iteration.
Based on your criteria, what's one startup that you're pretty excited to be investing in right now?
After I joined OMERS, which was like 7 weeks ago now, I spent about a week or a few days down in San Luis Obispo with a portfolio company called Postal. We had just invested in them before I joined. It was actually part of my case study when I interviewed. And I was just left fired up after meeting with the founders and the team. We spent a couple of days meeting with the go-to-market team. We did some product deep dives. We went through the board meeting. I think Eric and Jed have built a strong culture there. People are excited to work together, work hard, and win. And I think they have built some exciting plans for the next year. So I left really fired up. And it was awesome just kind of diving back in kind of that operating mentality and being a sounding board for companies like that, which are obviously going through such an exciting stage, And
you've only been at OMERS for a few weeks now, like you mentioned. What's keeping you up at night at your current role?
The role is so different, at a given operating company, you are focused on one aspect of that company, one pillar per se. And obviously, your role will present different types of projects or challenges that you'll be problem solving, but this is much more of a macro view. You spent time meeting with founders, you spent time focused trying to learn, whether that's from meeting with different experts in the field, reading, etc. You need to block off time to learn, which is very different than when you actually work at a company and you're in back-to-back meetings trying to solve problems and meet with the different individuals. I think the exciting part, but also the part that keeps me up at night, is that OMERS Ventures, especially in our office, I think it's a startup mentality. We've been around for 3 years, which is not long for a venture capital firm in the US, and you're really building a business. Same things that you would have to do if you're an operator. You have to think about the go-to-market strategy. You have to think about what the organizational design is. You have to think about some of the operations and processes internally and how you can streamline them. So the fact that we get to do that while also meeting with many different businesses and founders at the same time and learning from them is, I think, really unique and exciting for me.
And in terms of the tools that you guys are currently using in your stack, what kind of tools are you deploying?
We use a variety of tools. It's definitely not as ahead of the game at Slack or other tech companies. We're a small startup, right? So we use Affinity as our CRM. We also use a bunch of different data sources, whether that's PitchBook or Crunchbase. Crunchbase is a portfolio company. And I've been playing around with Notion most recently, just with some of my team to track our portfolio, but also some notes, and really liking it, and also seeing, some pitches in Notion, which is pretty cool. But yeah, kind of a more limited sales tool stack than your typical tech company, but we try to make sure we're using all the right things to deliver.
You haven't worked in tech in different roles for quite a while now. How has your personal hiring process changed over the years? What are you looking for now in a candidate?
I've recruited a lot of people throughout my career. I think, one thing I think about is, if you think about all the stops that I've had, each company has their set of cultural values. If you ask me what they were, I would not be able to tell you. Usually it's a list of 7 or a list of 10. I think Slack did a really good job. It was smart, humble, hardworking, collaborative, very easy to remember. And I think I'm a big believer in that. Those are the types of traits that I look for people I want to work with. And I think that combination, especially in the beginning, of like smart and humble, is incredibly important. Those are the people you want to be in the trenches with,
Yeah, no, I totally get that. And then coming from the opposite direction, what would be a red flag for you?
Fundamentally, I think there are obviously different red flags. I'll talk about, a deal breaker. And a deal breaker for me is like, I expect people to show up prepared and ready to go. So be on time, do your homework on the company, on the role, why you're a good fit, and be excited about that role. I think that's half the battle. And it's important to kind of get the easy stuff right. And if you can't get that easy stuff right, then it's likely a deal breaker for me.
And you did mention all the different stops you've had in your career, especially you've held different biz ops roles over almost a decade now. What's one key insight most people don't realize about this profession?
It's never just the job description. If you're in biz ops, it's everything else. A company has different functions. Biz ops means everything else. So whether that's helping prepare for a board meeting, or putting together a deck for investors, or figuring out any different type of project internally, whatever comes up, when I think about sales ops or marketing ops or all these other kind of like more focused biz ops teams, your job is still everything that the sales team doesn't do, right? You have obviously individual contributors and coaches that focus on that type of function, but your role is going to vary within biz ops. And I think if you have that mentality and you understand that going into it, you'll be a lot more successful, and you'll be constantly asked to chip in a variety of areas. And I think what's exciting is, if that company is going through growth and you are going through growth, it's not just going to be like temporary. Those are going to be consistent new things added to your role and remit, which only improves your curriculum of learning as you kind of advance in your career.
And looking back at all your time in the trenches, what's been the most enjoyable aspect of your career so far?
Just the people, if you work with great people, smart, humble, hardworking, collaborative, these are relationships you develop beyond those stops within your career. And I think I've had the benefit of, working with some great mentors that I learned a ton from. I've had the benefit of some great people on my team that I've really enjoyed working with. And I'm so happy that, took that leap and joined my team. And I think those are relationships that I'll have, beyond, a given workplace, whether it be Slack or Intercom or Zenefits or OMERS.
And have you been able to spot a common professional thread throughout all the roles in your career?
I think I'm just addicted to learning, if you are putting yourself in biz ops roles, if you're joining venture capital, you are drawn to the broken glass. You like problem solving, you like learning, and you try to find yourself in roles that maximize that. And that's what I've seen, kind of throughout my career. Maybe that'll change in the future, but I hope I'll be a lifelong learner.
I love that phrase so much, being drawn to the broken glass. It's the first time I'm hearing it, but I instantly resonated. So, some people work best as ICs, independent contributors, and others, they love working in a team. Your own collaboration style, has it changed over the years? And if so, how?
I think I've always been collaborative. I'm definitely extrovertive. I think that helps if you're in venture capital, because you're going to meet a ton of people, and you should be excited and fired up to meet a ton of people. I think what's changed in terms of collaboration is, in the early innings of your career, you are kind of familiar and more focused on working with your peers. As you advance in your career, it's important to learn how to work with all levels of the organization. So that's a mixture of managing up at times, developing talent, or just knowing the right approach to have for somebody who's might be way more senior than you to actually get something done.
Speaking of seniority, a lot of our readers are sales leaders leading rather large teams. Based on your experience, what's your top management tip for them? And how should they think about management as a whole?
Attracting, recruiting, and retaining talent is so important. And I don't think it's even more important now, And one of the biggest things you can implement, I think, is like have a monthly career conversation with each person on your team. That should be longer term focus, could be some short term feedback. It should include feedback at the level they're at and the feedback at the level they want. In addition to that, I feel like a lot of organizations should implement skip levels. So that's a meeting with your manager's manager. And it obviously depends on the shape of that org. Maybe your skip level is the VP of something. So maybe that's a semi-annual cadence, but there should be some cadence. And if that leader won't carve out that time for that individual, maybe that's not an organization you want to stay at. But I think having that in place really develops a relationship between that employee and that leader or those set of leaders, which is truly important in this, this time, especially when you don't get really a chance to kind of meet and develop those types of relationships when you're going into the office. And it also helps that individual feel like everybody's invested in the career. Like those two people are the most important people in deciding whether that person likes their job, what that career track looks like at that given company. So I'm a big advocate for that.
So, I get the idea that you're very on the money, focused on business and getting things done. What's something quirky about you that most people don't know? What do you nerd out on?
I nerd out on a lot of things. I think I like to read a lot. I like to dive into different things. I'm reading one newsletter, Exponential View, that has a really fun part at the end of each newsletter that says short morsels to appear smart at dinner parties, like little snippets of fun facts to share with people. In terms of something that people don't know about me, I guess is I'm a little bit of like a completionist, or maybe I have some FOMO, where anytime I watch like a TV show or a movie, I just need a Wikipedia afterwards. I like read through it and make sure I didn't miss out on anything. I look at the cast. I'm like, was that actor that I thought it was, or that actress? It's just a weird thing I do at the end of each one.
I totally get that. I used to be super addicted to TV tropes. And so you would watch a show and then just go and see all the different tropes that are in there. And then you go down this rabbit hole that you can't climb out of. And now you have some sort of major FOMO about when the next season is going to drop. So yeah, totally.
Totally. Like after the show ends, you want to like read up on all the rumors, what's happening next, any drama that happened in the show. It's just like, I want to be fully plugged in after I watch that show or movie,
Trolling IMDb, the whole works. Yeah, totally get that. And then switching back to work for a little bit. So, productivity tips, usually subjective, but what's your top productivity tip?
I don't think I have anything great to share here. I just use my calendar religiously. If it's not on my calendar, I'm not doing it. I go exactly where my calendar tells me. So obviously I have different Zoom meetings, different events that I'm attending, but I also just block off time for learning, reading, to-do lists, etc. I'll literally put in my entire to-do list in that event that I need to do and move it around from sections that are like to do to done. But yeah, I'm a big fan of the calendar.
And then you already mentioned the kind of shows and books that you're reading. Is there anything else that you're binging on at the moment?
Every week I love listening to Pivot. I don't know if you're familiar with that podcast. I think
Scott Galloway
and Scott have a great combination. I got introduced to, or like someone told me about Scott, I think like years ago. I was at like my friend's house in Denver and his dad was like, you got to watch this predictions show with me. And we like sat down and watched it. And I remember like thinking about it a couple of months later and like a lot of those predictions are like correct. I was like, who is this person? And I thought he had really, funny delivery, but you're also like learning at the same time. And I think it's even more powerful with like Carl, where it's like she calls him out on different things, and I think they have a really funny and good chemistry together. And it spans a lot of topics that I'm interested in, like business and tech.
I especially love his self-deprecating humor and the fact that he's not afraid to admit when he's wrong about a prediction.
Yeah.
I first discovered him through his Prof G podcast on Spotify. And
oh wow.
Yeah, no, I love the man's humor and wit. And I call it my idol foundry or whatever. There's different individuals in that Hall of Fame, and Scott's one of them. I think his personality, part of it, the acerbic wit specifically, is something that I aspire to. I think it's
you should go back and watch some of his old predictions from I don't know what years I started watching it. I feel like maybe it was like 2015 or 14. He would do it at that conference. Like I think it was like, I forget what conference, but he would do that there. It's funny to look back on some of them, but I agree. He makes fun of himself in a really funny way. And I also think he's like to the point in a way that I really relate to. Like, do you remember when he talks about like career aspirations and his like advice for that? A lot of people are like, follow your passion. And I think he jokes at like, that person who's like a millionaire who owns like a hardware tool manufacturing business, like that was definitely not his passion. He's good at it. People will pay him for it, and he doesn't hate it. And I was like, okay, that's much more realistic, and I really ascribe to that too.
And he's always kind of directing his advice to young people and giving them that exact kind of advice that will allow them to just avoid the pitfalls that most people make in their career.
That's
great.
I love it.
Speaking of careers, if you weren't working in sales and investing, what would you be doing instead?
I don't know if I could do it, but what I would do would be, I would try to be David Attenborough's like an intern, protege, apprentice. Like his documentaries are just him going to amazing places all over the world. He's like usually like lying on an iceberg next to like a seal, documenting something and narrating at the same time. Like, I would love to be that guy's intern and just travel with him and learn from him and be able to have probably a bunch of cool life experiences. I don't know what the application process is for that, but if you do know, let me know.
It's funny you should mention that. So, I used to do voiceovers not too long ago. And as you were speaking just now, I was kind of playing out a scenario in my head of David Attenborough narrating a pitch from a founder to you, OMERS Ventures. So it was like, the investor observes the prey coming in.
That would be great. I'd love that.
And, going back to kind of the career talk and Scott's advice, if you were starting your career all over again, what's one thing you'd do differently?
One thing I've thought about is just living and working abroad. I think I wish I had done that. My aunt and uncle had done that. That's how they met. I've got a chance to do some longer trips, but there's something different about like living and working somewhere, putting down roots, especially in a different country with a different culture and environment. I think that probably really expands your perspectives and worldview. And it just seems really cool to me. I don't know if I haven't done that. Have you?
Yeah, I've lived in 6 countries. South Africa is actually my 6th home. And I'm not done yet for some strange reason. I think I'm nomadic through and through. So I totally relate to that. And it's definitely an experience I'd want to give to my kids as well. I'd want them to see the world and be exposed to new cultures, because it does do something to your mindset. It changes how you view things.
It sounds like you're an advocate, and I need to figure out how to add that in.
Oh, absolutely. Anything remote work, anything nomadic experiences outside. I'm seeing a lot of countries nowadays like Barbados and Malta recently. They've just released like nomad visas. So the world is kind of moving in that direction where they understand that, look, people want to see the world, they want to experience different things, and they want to work from different places, and they need to be given the freedom to do that. I've been speaking to Justin Ouyang, investor at OMERS Ventures, former director of sales strategy and operations at Slack. Justin, we'll catch you next time.
Thanks.